Good day, sir. My name is Marcel Mahusay, the leader of Group 2. We have a voice record for GED 5. It's all about Spanish version of Martyrdom of Gomborza by Edmund Plauchut. Objectives: elucidate the Spanish version of martyrdom, discuss the martyrdom of Gomborza, and cite the historical importance of the martyrdom of Gomborza. Abstraction: Father Gomez, Father Burgos, and Father Zamora. Gomborza. Bakit Gomborza ang tawag sa kanila? Because of Gomborza combination sa Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora. Summarily tried and sentenced to death by Garrote on January 20, 1872. Active in the fight for the secularization, creating trouble for the despotic Governor Rafael Izquierdo. Governor Rafael Izquierdo and the powerful regular religious orders in the country by linking them with the uprising in the Cavite Arsenal. Whether the indeed had anything to do with it or not, the administration found a convenient way of doing away with the troublesome trio. Were the three involved in the uprising? Establishing the truth of the case will take painstaking investigation. The question would probably remain one of the great unsolved mysteries in the Filipinos' fight for freedom. Until he breathed his last, Father Burgos protested innocence of the crime imputed to him and Rizal, in dedicating the filibusterismo to the three condemned men, underscored the doubt shared by the Filipinos over their guilt. MSGR Meleton Martinez, Archbishop of Manila, was served a copy of the death sentences with a request that the priest be defrocked. In reply, the Archbishop said he needed more convincing proof of their guilt and refused to be instrumental in affecting the crowning touch to their humiliation. Irrefutable evidences against Father Gomez, Father Burgos, and Father Zamora has been cited. The three won an octogenarian known for the charities. Another turned half-crazed at the prospect of a ghastly death, and the third widely admired for his courageous exposal of the rights of the Filipinos. In particular, the clergy would just the same have been looked on as martyrs by their compatriots.
Edmund Plauchut. Isa din si Edmund Plauchut. Sa pag-research lang nako sa akong nahibalan sa iya, isa din siya ka manunulat og tig-photographs, drawings, og sa mga uban niyang personal na papel na nahibalo sa iya. Ang mga materyales, dokumento ni Plauchut, nagagana ni siya kung asa siya moadto or sa iyang kinabuhi ba na wala pa kaila sa iya or dira pa nila maila-ila kung unsa siya sa tungod sa iyang nabuhat sa iyang kinabuhi or unsa iyang naagian niya or mga tungod sa iyang naagian ingana lang. Maura na akong nahibalan kay Edmund Plauchut. Manunulat siya, tig photographs, drawing ug mga traveler day siya bisan asa. Kana lang.
Augustinian Ferrer Casimiro Herrera. Act of Divine Providence in form of the mutiny, Governor Rafael Izquierdo dispatched 2 infantry regiments and an artillery brigade with 4 cannons under the command of General Felipe Ginobs Espinar.
Those who staged the revolt in the San Felipe Fort were counting on help in other comrades in other military establishment in Cavite and Manila is highly plausible. Ang mga katutubong sundalo sa establishmento ay matagal nang nanghihina dahil sa diskriminasyon sa pagtrato. Isa sa mga aksyon ni Governor Izquierdo sa pagkuha sa ibabaw ng gerinda ng pamahalaan ay upang iutos ang pagsasanib ng 2 artilyera batalyon ng Manila. So one of these was composed of Spaniards o ang Peninsulars, yung iba naman ay mga Mestizo at Pilipino. Bago ang pagsasanib, ang 2 batalyon ay pinapanatili ng hiwalay at independent sa isa't isa para maiwasan ang pag-aaway na lilitaw dahil sa mga pagkakaiba sa lahi. The Cavite Uprising was one of the manifestation of this dissatisfaction over condition of the army. Maaaring ito ay bahagi ng pinagsama-samang plano para mag-alsa sa mga katutubong elemento sa iba pang mga establishmento ng military. The Council of War set up a court-martial under Manuel Buscasa. Some 70 people were condemned to death. When Governor Izquierdo quelled the mutiny, he should have rested on his laurels. Instead, he turned it into a terrible example that the insolent filibuster should never forget. Nang maglaon, ilan sa mga namatay ang mga sentensya ay binago sa pagtapon o pagkakulong. Kabilang sa mga pinalayas hanggang sa malayo at malungkot na Marianas Island ay sina Antonio Maria Regidor, Maximo Paterno, Agustin Mendoza, and Joaquin Pardo de Tavera. Maximo Inocencio, Enrique Paraiso, and Crisanto de los Reyes are given with jail terms. Kabilang sa pag-arote ang 3 pari na sina Father Burgos, Father Gomez, at Father Zamora. Gayon din si Francisco Saldua. The latter had been the principal informer against the 3 priests. Ang pahayag ni Gobernador Izquierdo ay naging pangunahing batayan para sa mga paniniwala at ipinangako niya kapalit ng kanyang testimonya. So, to his consternation, however, he was condemned along with the 3. He was the first of the heads to roll in February 17. The court-martial proceedings appeared to be highly anomalous. Evidence to support the charges did not accompany the decision, which merely that the court had found them guilty on conspiring to overthrow of the government and proclaim a Republic of the Philippines with Father Burgos as president. The defendants were given a counsel chosen by the court. The counsel, Dr. Jose Arrieta, on reading his brief, said that it was not possible to defend Father Burgos because he had already confessed. So let's proceed. Governor Izquierdo committed a blunder when he had the priest executed and the other suspect exiled or otherwise sentenced for scarcely proved complicity in the Cavite revolt. Governor Izquierdo was merely setting the pattern for his reign of terror, only to be well known in the Philippine history. Historians admit that he committed a blunder when he had the priest executed and other suspect exiled or sentenced to death. If he had not, the fire of nationalism would not have caught and spread.
4 years earlier, in 1968, the Queen had been dethroned and a Republican had been installed. The revolution in the mother country had reflections in the island. The revolution did nothing good on the island. Second, in 1968, the liberal government dilatory was sent over. All the progressive mind elements in the country were to enjoy a brief spell of liberalism under the new government. They all happy for their new liberalism for new government. Number 3. Until 19th century will be the Filipino nation present a united self-conscious front. The curiousness of the Filipino become here even centuries later.
pouring in lieu of the invalid wife of the liberal Governor de la Torre. Long live the sovereign people, long live liberty, and long live General de la Torre. On April 4, 1871, de la Torre was replaced by Izquierdo. Noong April 4, 1871, si de la Torre ay pinalitan ng Izquierdo. Archbishop Martinez traced the beginning of the religious question to the issuance of the Cedula of July 8, 1826. Si Archbishop ay sinundan ang simula na relihiyosong tanong sa pagpapalabas ng Cedula noong July 8, 1826. A second Cedula, issued on March 9, 1849, authorized the transfer of 7 specific parishes in the Cavite from secular to regulars. Ang pangalawang sedula ay inilabas noong March 9, 1849. Pinahintulutan ang paglipat ng 7 specific parishes sa Cavite mula sa secular hanggang regular. The last straw was the Royal Order of September 10, 1861, giving all curates in Cavite to Manila to the members of the Recollect Order.
Father Burgos led the protest against what he charged were intrusions on the part of the regulars into what properly and legally belonged to the local clergy. So Father Burgos organized a clerical party to fight for secularization. The party subsidized the newspaper, which is the El Eco Filipino, that published in Madrid, which became the organ of the champions for secularization of the churches and later of civil reforms. Father Burgos and his followers argued that the turning over of the parishes to the regulars contravened the provisions of the Council of Trent Agreement, which expressly prohibited the friars from holding the curates. So under the Trent Agreement, only secular priests were supposed to hold parishes and administer the spiritual needs of the populace, while regulars were to live in their monasteries and devote their time to religious contemplation and to missionary and educational work. So the regulars, on the other hand, countered that the seculars were not competent to hold the parishes and that, moreover, they had been holding these curates at the indulgence of the crown in Madrid, which had the right to take away as its pleasure. What really made the curates such a big bone of contention, besides, of course, the fact that they were good sources of revenues, was the fact that those holding them became spheres of influence, social and political, in the communities. The regulars realized that they would be reduced to political impotence if they retired to their monasteries, refused to give up the parishes that they had maneuvered to get from the native priests through high-powered and obviously successful lobbying in Madrid. It was this friar fraction which believed to have insisted on laying the extreme penalty for Father Burgos, his fellow cura del Sagrario in the Cathedral of Santa Zamora, and the octogenarian Gomez for complicity in the Cavite revolt. In one fell swoop, they would do away with an annoying threat to the comfortable positions they had been able to wangle from Madrid as heads of the most lucrative parishes in the islands. So that's all for the lead of protest by Father Burgos. By the story circulated that the evidence against the 3 priests has been fabricated, and that in fact the revolt had been instigated by the friars. So Friar Rufian's presence in the Bislage for Fort and San Felipe was never satisfactorily explained to frame up Father Burgos, Father Gomez, and Father Zamora. One take was that some friars had brought him Zambales, a native who looked like Father Gomez, rigged him up in the priest's attire, and thus managed to implicate the good man in the mutiny. These stories were to serve as the fodder to the steadily growing fire. It is because these stories were to serve as fodder to the steadily growing fire. It is because those who put to the garrote of a crime never satisfactory proof included the cruel, which is cruel is the mixed European and black descent, which is Father Borges, and a half Chinese, which is Father Zamora, and a pure-blooded Tagalog, which is Father Gomez. The various elements presented by these three races saw in the unjust execution a common cause which was not just cruel or mestizo or indio. Up to then, these various groups has held each other in distrust as a result of the divide and rule policy maintained by most despotic regimes and so successfully practiced by the peninsulars in the island. With the executions, Father Burgos, Father Zamora, and Father Gomez emerged as martyrs. The various active groups became bound in anger over the atrocity, and on this union was laid the foundation for a Filipino nation. Some of the liberal elements had been advocating mere assimilation with Spain. Spain is the country to take on the status of a province. Now they were asking themselves whether assimilation and not complete independence to run their lives in their country was what they wanted. Mary Jane E. Insick reporting.
Austin Craig, in his lineage, Life and Labors of Rizal, recalls that Father Burgos ante mortem advised to the Filipinos was for them to seek education abroad because only through education could they hope for progress. It was advice that was well taken. Rizal, whose older brother, Pasiano, was a close friend of Burgos, was soon to leave his native shores for Madrid and other points overseas. There he was to crystallize his ideas for reform. This is the last part of our video record for GED 5 Lesson 2.